Good morning, everyone. This is Mike Tremonti, Chair of the committee, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. I think we have a quorum, but we'll go ahead and do a roll call right quick to make sure. Chuck Fox.
Morning, Mike. I'm here.
Good morning. Angelica. Marin Hill.
Here, present.
Great. Lauren Shear.
Good morning, I'm present.
Okay. Jenny Gomez Leon.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Tomas Guajardo.
Morning, present.
Chris Kavash.
Good morning, present.
Penny Harkey.
I'm here.
Jeff Burton.
Good morning, I'm here.
Richard Lang. Okay. Dwayne Morris. Paula Myrick Short. We're going through roll call right now. So Dr. Lang. Okay.
Present and accounted for.
Wonderful. Okay. And it's my understanding that Michael Miller will be sitting in Rick Anderson's behalf until he does it does get coordinating board approval. He's a non-voting member, but certainly a contributing member to the committee.
Thank you, Mike. Present.
Okay. Okay. Looks like we're only lacking Dwayne and Paula so far. So I think we can go ahead and move forward. We have a quorum, more than a quorum. With that behind us, I'd like to all the information was sent out earlier to the committee, the materials, the minutes, and so on. And I guess the one thing I would ask is that if everybody could mute unless they care to speak, to limit any kind of feedback, that would be great. And so with that, I'd like to ask you to consider approval of the minutes. Do we have
So moved.
okay? Do we have a
Second.
second? Okay, Tomas, second. All in favor? Okay, we will move forward. The first thing on our agenda beyond the minutes is moving on to our first charge, that is to study and make recommendations for the appropriate funding levels for the I&O infrastructure research enhancement, GME, and mission-specific formulas. The coordinating board, based on the recommendation of the committee, has put together a comparison of the various indexes on the projections. And I'd like to, at this point, open it up to the committee for any conversation regarding, leaning one way or another from a CPI standpoint. Obviously, the health index is higher, the higher education is the lowest. Thoughts from the committee? Okay. Not everybody jump out there at once. It's our I guess there would be one caveat that I asked us to consider, and that is to retain our position that we'd like to get to the 2000, 2001, but in the interim, as opposed to a third or a half or whatever way there, I would recommend using the health-related index or the clinical index for driving the new rates.
Mike, a question before commenting on that. On the spreadsheet that the coordinating board shared, showing the projections, the tab titled HRI back FY24-25 estimated.
Mm-hmm.
Are the medical care and average CPI switched, those tables? Because the medical care is using the medical CPI is showing a lower cost, if I'm not mistaken. Am I reading something incorrectly?
I think you are probably right. Let's see yeah, because if you look at the inflation indexes,
Right.
You certainly see the higher rates. Well, I say that, but actually, if you look at the data, the overall increase is greater for the U.S. average.
Right.
So with that said, let me I'll back up. I will ask for it appears that the U.S. average is actually the better route to go.
Well, but before we I guess make that determination, is that true, or is there just a disconnect between the table in the first tab and the inflation indices that do show a higher medical CPI? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, no, it's and I'll ask Ed Buchanan to speak up or on this behalf. He's did a lot of the background work on this, so let me look at the detail as well in that inflation index tab.
So what it's doing is comparing the average inflation index as calculated for 24-25 to 2019. So it's calculating a difference there.
Right. Well, and I think
it actually, if those numbers are correct, it is actually lower for the medical care.
Yeah, you're right. Because it has a higher endpoint and total value, but the starting point is considerably higher too for 2019. So I think that somewhat counterintuitive, it appears that the numbers did for the U.S. average actually did come out with a higher level.
I do find that surprising. I would not have guessed that, but that's what the numbers are showing.
Well, and that's why I asked if there is a disconnect, because then I think there is a discussion needed whether the medical CPI, just as a policy decision makes more sense for us, or we want the outcome compared to 2019 to be the driver.
Right.
I guess I'm a little confused because the detailed data, like let's just look at cell G33 on the inflation index tab. Medical is higher than the cell above it, G31, but then you go over to N31 and that's the US average is higher than the medical care. And I think I just admittedly haven't taken enough time to follow the formulas, but
Ed, are you on the call? Could you walk us through the document?
Yes, I'm on the call.
Could you walk through the document?
Okay, I'm just a minute. I was getting where I could do both, look at the spreadsheet and talk at the same time. I'm not sure that I entirely follow what's at question here. Without a little better explanation. I think I had to try to address Angelica's question. The dollar estimates were done without the split that you wanted in graduate allied health, okay? So I'd like to clarify that point. There's a separate spreadsheet that shows that information. So Angelica, did that address the question you raised?
It addresses, I think, a part of the question, and thanks for clarifying that. I think in general, though, the increase due to splitting allied health into graduate and undergraduate is, relatively minor compared to the large number. Is that right? So it shouldn't be a huge factor.
Oh, correct. It was slightly over $1 million, but that split isn't reflected in these dollar estimate worksheet. Basically, I guess that, Chris, maybe you need to elaborate a little bit more on where the issue, I don't see the issue you're raising. I'm sorry.
I think the question is, Ed, and I think that if you look at fiscal at 2020, you can see that it changes. There are times that the medical is higher, but what you've done is that means that the future years are significantly lower. The inflation factor is significantly lower in medical than it is in the US city, in order to ultimately get to a point where the medical care is lower than the US city average. So it could be higher in some years, but when you just take and extrapolate it over that whole period of time, it's lower. Does that make sense?
Well, I hear what you're saying. All I can say is the projections, like on rows 24 and below on the inflation index tab, are all done consistently in relation to the indexes above. So, I guess that's about the only answer I can give you without perhaps you pointing out something in more detail for me. I mean, the calculations are all consistent. They are what they are. I mean,
Yeah, in running some quick numbers on the growth index, or the index number in comparison to 2019, the US city average for 2025 is 20.42% over the base year. On the medical index, it's 14.71. So I guess my question, Ed, is the indexes themselves, as we got into 24 and 25, what inflationary factors were applied to that, or was that something that the table actually provided?
No, you notice there on row 4, there's indication that those are forecast numbers based on the prior 3 years. So as you move forward, the 3-year period jumps for each one of them. So what you have is that Excel is projecting out those based upon the prior 3 indexes as a starting point, and then each year moves along. So that was one of the reasons why it's good to have as many prior indexes as you can have when you're doing forecasts, to get an accurate forecast.
Right. Yeah, I think if
Yeah.
you look at the actual index numbers themselves, what you'll notice is that between 21 and 20,
Yeah,
there's minimal increase in the medical care index, where there's still a sizable jump on the US city average.
That's what's causing the
yeah,
issue.
that's what I'm seeing now. I was picking out a point in time, looking at like 2020, but then it starts to flip. So thank you for taking a look at that, but that's why, the medical's higher for a while and then it switches gears.
Right. And I think, as Ed said, there isn't really an index as we push it out. However, we are taking the average of the prior 3 years. So I guess the first question to the group is that an appropriate way to handle this? Does anybody have any suggestions as far as an additional alternative? And then we can move on as to which index.
So Ed, this is Rick. On the inflation indices on rows 10 and 11, that is the consumer price index for Texas urban consumers, and then obviously in 12 and 13, the medical care. I didn't see those numbers modeled out. Did I miss that?
No,
Well, okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
well, we went ahead, and because the US city average was slightly higher, instead of using just the Texas average, we went with the higher rate.
Well, the reason why I ask is the medical care is actually higher than urban consumers in Texas. And those numbers, if you just go from 2019 to 2021, it's higher for the Texas city with the medical care than it is, which is all.
As a point of comparison, excuse me, and looking at that and the medical care on the US city average, again, in comparison to 2025's index, 14.71% of an increase versus on the Texas, and you're right, it's 17.34. So
Yeah.
that is higher from the Texas medical index.
If I could jump in and just make one clarification for you, there is no regional Texas consumer index. When you have to choose between the Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington area or the Houston area. But the CPI folks do not publish a state index.
Right. I guess my point, it'd be interesting to see what Houston is, because if the Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington area is indicative of the major metropolitan areas in Texas, the medical care CPI is higher than the overall CPI, as opposed to the US city average.
Okay.
Ed, do you have the Houston index handy that you just?
No, I
share
do
the
not
numbers
have it
qualitatively?
handy. I did not pull it down.
Okay, is that something that we'd like to table to have at the next meeting, or is that something we'd like to go, again, the US city average is above both the Dallas Fort Worth medical and urban or total average CPI for the region. I mean, we can certainly pull the Houston information.
Yeah.
For our next meeting, if that's the preference.
Your point's well taken, and that is, unless Houston's actually higher than the US city average, then we'd be better off just using that.
But I don't think it would hurt to know.
Right. Okay,
Other
do
thing
we,
that Ed touched on was when you're projecting just based on 3 years of data, it can skew things. So I wondered what it would look like if we went back to 2011, just for the projection purposes, and still comparing to 2019.
right,
You could certainly argue 2019 and 2020 weren't typical years.
Yeah, or 21. Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
Well, I guess my only question is there something special about 2011 as opposed to, how many years would we like? Would we like 8, 10 years? Would we like 5 years? I mean, obviously, 10 years may flatten things. Not that we can't model that and see how things look.
So Mike, I just find out the more, again, I'm not trying to make it any more complicated. The more information you have, the better informed you can make your decision. So
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
looking at 10 years and looking at US and then the 2 major metropolitan areas in Texas, we have the 3-year data with the absence of the regional things in Texas. And I think it'd be worthwhile to have it. Just take a look at it.
Okay, let's go ahead and so I have a recommendation to go ahead and we'll expand our review to 2011, so we can come up with the average data on that, as well as adding the Houston region into this analysis as well. Do I have I believe that's Dr. Lang's motion.
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Angelica's second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, we will do that. And since we are applying these same inflation factors across all formulas, we'll go ahead and table that final decision on all our formulas from that growth rate. The next item is associated with the allied health weights that we discussed last time, and the coordinating board has prepared an analysis of changing the allied health formula weight between graduate and or at least master's and doctoral level above undergraduate. I believe that was in your materials as well. As you can see that, again, this does impact a number of different schools. Looks like overall on the 22-23 basis, that would have added another $1.8 million overall to the formula, if I'm reading this correct, Ed?
That's correct.
Okay. So at this point in time, I'd like to open it up for comments, questions, and discussion. Lauren, is this what you had in mind when we first made the proposal?
Yeah, I think the analysis was very helpful that the coordinating board staff prepared. I'd be open to discussion with the committee about if the 1.018 is the appropriate weight for graduate level. And I would also add the note, I mentioned this in the last meeting, that I think it will be important that if we do make this recommendation, that we, highly emphasize that we would want the legislature to provide this additional funding to fund the increase in the weight, that there not be a reallocation, so to speak, with this change in weight. So I'll kind of pause there and see what others think about this weight and the changes. Happy to have a discussion about that.
Okay. Let's see. So, Jenny, your thoughts on this? It looks like as I move down the list, that certainly has an impact on San Antonio.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the analysis, and I like the detail that was provided to identify, which of those programs are there. I do think that, we're still struggling on our end to get the right funding mix to be able to really support, the cost associated with some of these programs. And so I think this is a start in the right direction. I just don't know that I have a stronger basis to support anything other than than the rate that we talked about right here. I knew it was going to be a low, calculated difference. I just don't know that I have the better weight to recommend. But I can tell you that we've got the costs, we've got the programs, we've got the clinical experiences, we've got the desire to really focus in on this workforce to help with a lot of the other kind of clinical care providers that we're trying to educate in the state, to help with nursing shortage, to help with the provider shortage. So I know that the need is there. I just don't know that I really have the right weight to recommend, but this is certainly a great start.
Okay. Penny, from tech's perspective, obviously y'all are probably the most impacted. Have y'all done any kind of a cost study or anything like that from the allied health perspective?
No, we have not done a cost study, no, as far as how much it costs per program at all. And it's going to vary completely, even between these clinical programs. You're going to see a variance there because allied health is so diverse. A PA is going to be extremely expensive. You've got gross anatomy in some of these programs that you don't have in other programs and things. So there's lots of different variations of that also. But, I agree with Jenny that I don't necessarily, and I have not gone back and tried to look at what is a cost study by any means, but it is a great start. And I do think that there is a difference, particularly in these graduate programs, than there is in the undergraduate programs.
Okay. Well, knowing the challenges of getting a weight changed based on our experience with SBMI, but that was sort of an N of one. This one definitely has a much broader appeal and impact. I do agree with Lauren from the perspective of asking the legislature to fund this as opposed to making the slices of the pie smaller. I guess I will open it up to the committee. Do we move forward with the 1.018, or is there some, a cost study that could be done at the various entities to bring some additional information to the table for this?
Just as a contributing member, I would recommend a look at a cost study to make sure that 1.10, that new weight is appropriate. It could be higher, and you would want to make sure you get this done right.
Okay. Again, Penny, Lauren, do we tackle the 0.018 or do we go ahead and can y'all, because the cost study will occur within the institutions, I think, for the most part. Is this something that we're positioned to take on in these first few months?
I'm a little hesitant for a cost study, like Penny mentioned, just given the differences we're going to have between institutions and then also within the different disciplines. But I do agree that if we're going to move forward with some sort of recommendation that we get it right, like Michael said. So, like I said, depending on how the committee feels, if they want to take a deeper dive into the appropriate weight, and what the framework is there, or, if we think this kind of is as Jenny said, a move in the right direction at this point. Penny, I don't know, your thoughts.
I think we could definitely, it's not that much higher, 1 to 1.018. When you have particularly when you look at our range of all of our programs, I think it would be worthy to look, because we are looking at that lowest level program still compared to GSBS. And so I'm fine with that. We could do that within our institution. I think that our school actually tracks that very closely to see what that looks like. Now, here's the truth, though. I mean, when we start looking at that, we need to make sure that we are standardizing, I think, some level of a process, because we all know that these rates don't just support academic programs. I mean, they support a level of overhead and everything. So to make sure how are we allocating that, that sort of stuff. So I think it would be incumbent for those of us who have these programs to meet and make sure that we're all looking at it in the same way.
Okay. So is this, so it sounds like a subcommittee is being recommended to take a look at this. Can I have volunteers for that subcommittee?
I will, excuse me, I will volunteer.
Okay.
Same here.
Okay, Jenny and Penny.
So I do have a proposal, though, for the cost study, just a thought, not just how much does it cost, but maybe what we need to consider so that we don't have to go down a road of overhead and calculation and distribution of overhead, is simply the comparison of average cost of undergraduate in those programs versus graduate to get that differential. And so we've got that starting point.
Yeah, that would definitely make it much cleaner.
Right.
Because you're right, overhead's allocated differently in different places, but the direct cost ought to be fairly straightforward. Tell you, my recommendation is again to let the subcommittee hash that out, make that definition. I mean, there are a few others, UNT obviously is impacted somewhat, as is Southwestern. Are we comfortable with the subgroup of the three putting this together, or do we want to expand to include some of the other ones who are also impacted?
I'm happy to participate.
Okay. Okay, Chuck, how about you?
Yeah, I'd be happy to be on that subcommittee as well. Keeping in mind, we don't have any undergraduate to look at, but we can definitely contribute our graduate piece of it.
Okay. Okay, is there anyone? Tomas, y'all you appear to be minimally impacted. Is that something you'd like to be involved in as well, or?
We're happy to participate as well.
Okay. Okay.
And so just making sure I'm clear, what we're charging the subcommittee to do is to go back and do the study at the individual institutions, looking at the differential between the graduate and undergraduate programs to see if this cost at this rate would be sufficient enough to cover those programs. And then if not, what it would be, and if is it somewhere with another weight, or is it a different weight all in of itself? And I think in the discussions, I think I was understanding we were trying to make this easier and not try to introduce a new weight, but just kind of try to use one that seemed already appropriate for the cost of the programs already in place.
Okay, it sounds like a motion.
Okay. I move that the subcommittee continue to evaluate the cost differential between undergraduate and graduate programs to determine if this weight is sufficient to cover the costs associated with those programs.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. Jenny, would you mind chairing the subcommittee?
How about I co-chair with Lauren?
Okay, sounds like a plan. Okay, and we'll be positioned to present this at our next meeting? Is that you've got nothing going on in September, do you? It's okay. Boy, we're just clearing the decks of things here. Jeff, I'm not doing near as well as you did last biennium. Okay.
Yeah, I think we were through in October or so last time. So
yeah, I think we were reviewing draft reports now. It's a wow. Okay. I don't know if I should feel good about this or whether I'm a failure here. So that's okay. I think more analysis is always better. Okay. I think we've beaten that one up pretty good. So the next charge has to do with charge 3 is the consideration and discussion and approval of the current I&O programs to determine whether any specialties need to be assigned separate weights. I thought we had at that point or last time had pretty much moved on and said that there were none. Is that everyone's understanding? Okay. Hearing no one, and I guess for the record, let me say Dwayne Morris and Paula Short have joined the meeting and did so from pretty much from the beginning. So do we have consensus on that one? At least that one is put to bed. Any motion to move on and let that one be settled?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, well, we will be moving forward with no change recommended based on charge 3. Our charge 4 is the consideration and discussion of formula funding for the planned Doctor of Podiatric Medicine degree. Michael, and you may have been tuned in last time. Rick was going to provide some detail. Hopefully you can provide some insight regarding that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The work group has met, and we have a working document that kind of lays out in detail kind of what we're going to look at. One of those includes, should podiatric medicine be included in the School of Medicine weight, or should have a weight of its own? So the subcommittee is tackling a outline that we've created. I don't know if I have share capability, but Emily, if you want to share that document, we can show the work. We can show the formula committee kind of the straw man that we're working from. But we're going to go through this. I have my deans for both the medical school and the School of Podiatric Medicine going to be talking to the work group at our next meeting prior to the October 4th Formula Advisory Committee meeting. And it's going to allow them to talk about the program specifics. And so one of the things we're going to be looking at is going over each of these items that we've listed here. So taking a dive into the programmatic costs for podiatric medicine, taking a look at what factors should we include when determining a weight, direct costs, indirect costs. And then Penny had highlighted, some of the things we're not going to consider is like overhead. So we're just going to go straight cost for faculty cost. But one of the other things that we're also going to, that I think that the Formula Advisory Committee should consider is the impact of HB 2509. And that is the GME formula and including GME students within residency programs that currently exist. So this is the straw man that in which I'm going to be developing a white paper for the group to consider and submit a recommended weight. So I'll ask the work group if I've missed anything that we've talked about so far. Okay, so I would invite, I did email this to Emily. I don't know if it made it into the packet that went out, but I would invite that if there's anything that the Foreign Advisory Committee would like to include in the work group discussion, to just be inclusive of this document. That way we make sure that we hit on all points.
Okay. Comments from the committee?
I think Mike provided an excellent summary. And so great job, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mike, what are we thinking timetable wise?
I would like to have a white paper to the committee, and I know it's probably not going to meet Jeff's timeline since he was wrapped up in October. So I'm thinking at the November meeting, we'll have a white paper to the group prior to that, so we could discuss it at the November meeting.
Okay.
Does that seem reasonable?
I would think so. It's probably, we can certainly move forward through concurrent paths. I think we were, based on our current track record, we were going to be meeting in November. So it's a.
Okay.
Is that okay with the committee?
The one thing I would like to bring up, and we did have this discussion as a work group before we kicked this off. I did ask the work group to make sure that we were having this discussion in the right forum, and meaning, are we having the right discussion about podiatric medicine within the HRI group? And we were all in the consensus that we are having it within the right area, given the specialty and looking at this as a third branch of medical education. The difficulty that we're doing here is that we're creating a weight much in a different format in which the original formulas were created. So again, looking forward to any feedback that the committee has and how we can improve this document for discussion with the work group.
I'm not, again, since we have an N of 1 in this case, my recommendation would be that sort of the upper limit is the medical weight.
Yes, sir. And I think that's where the work group had decided that the upper limit would be the medical school weight, that if we did decide that the costs were going to be higher, at least in my mind, that weight would be inclusive of the school, a medical student weight, as opposed to a new higher weight. So the upper limit would be that medical student weight and nothing higher. If we found that it was going to be lower, then it would be a weight of its own between medicine and dental, or maybe even lower than dental. But we're going to take a look at the cost and come up with a recommendation.
Okay. So one other question comes to mind, and that is, oftentimes we see as again, a new school or a new program comes on, there may be support that's received in different fashions outside of the INO formula. Are we, I guess, the cost study that you're performing, are you viewing it from really an ongoing cost basis, or and from that, I mean, not including potential ramp-up costs?
No, sir, we're not including potential ramp-up costs. We're looking at what I've provided the pro forma to the group, and we're looking at what that cost would look at after a mature matriculation of class size. So when we get to that full class size, that's the cost that we're looking at, and we'll be determining what the weight will be, but nothing thereafter.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So we will we'll move forward with or effectively table that item until November. You do bring up a good point on the HB 2509. From what I've seen, it appears that there may be other institutions that actually have podiatry residents. Is that correct?
I believe so, and Emily has some detail on that. So I'd like to maybe pass it back to the coordinating board and have Emily kind of go into a bit more detail on which programs are in existence.
Sure. The legislation passed last session, and this is a data point that we don't currently collect at the coordinating board because there hasn't been any funding or related to podiatric residents in the past. So when we pulled down data regarding what are the currently accredited residency slots for podiatry, there was about, I think, 6 or 7 in the state, one of which was associated with A&M Health Science Center, I think another with Health Science Center San Antonio, and then a couple others that we don't know if it's associated with another health-related institution since we don't currently collect it. So our reporting team is making changes to be able to collect that data this fall. And so we should have more better data to share on that once those that information is submitted. But I'm happy to share with the entire group if you'd like to see what were the current resident accredited slots that we did find.
Okay. If possible, if you could provide that for next meeting, we can potentially add that to the agenda for discussion from a GME formula standpoint. Also, Emily and Ed, would y'all like to also participate in the Allied Health Cost Study Work Group?
Be happy to.
Okay. Okay.
And did I hear that, Mike, you said you were going to provide, either through the coordinating board, provide that summary work group document that you just reviewed?
Yes, I sent that to Emily.
Okay.
So I think they can, or I can provide it. Just let me know. I'm happy to send it to the group. Or Emily, do y'all want to send that?
We can shoot it out to the group after this meeting.
Okay. All right.
And would I further presume correctly that it would be the recommendation of the work group to make sure, like the Allied Health, that we're not redistributing, that we're adding it to funding and not redistributing it amongst the existing formula?
Yes, I can add that to this document, that anything that we recommend for a weight would be additive to the formula. Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, and Ed, I'm keep me honest here, or Emily, I don't assume we need a motion to move forward with that future work, since that's effectively already been requested.
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is subsequent meetings. And I think last time we had adjusted some times. Our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, October 13th with, looks like we're definitely going to have a Tuesday, November 9th meeting. Is that still good for everyone?
It is. Mike, I have a question before we proceed to the next meetings.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I know we've been talking about the coordinating board running different CPI scenarios as for the next meeting, but within that recommendation, there was a question about mission specific and seeking committee guidance. on how to calculate that. Should we discuss that at this time right now, so that could be included with the next run scenario for the next meeting?
Okay, sure. So let's go ahead and I'll tell you what, let's get the subsequent meeting wrapped up and we'll circle back to
Okay, perfect.
that other business. Everybody, again, just to confirm, everybody's good with those dates as listed?
Sorry, Mike, did you say the
So-
12th or 13th? The 12th is the Tuesday.
13th, I think. Seems like Dr. Lang, you may have mentioned you had a Regents meeting or something on the 12th.
It does. It starts at noon, however, Central Time. So if we hold it before noon, I'll be perfectly fine.
Okay,
So I can either do that Tuesday or that Wednesday, whatever you all would like.
I think the meeting request has already gone out, correct? So
Right.
that's for Tuesday, the 12th?
Yeah, I've got that.
okay.
Hey, Mike, did you say November 9th?
I did.
So that's rough. We have our CBO meeting, all the UT system CBOs. It looks to me from 10 to 12 that day.
Okay,
The Business Management Council.
gotcha.
I thought we had landed on November 16th, actually, and that's what's listed
Yeah,
in the
I've got the-
minutes.
I've got the 16th.
Oh, good.
as
Yes,
well.
I have
Yes.
as well. Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah, we changed it to November 6th.
You're right, you're right. Got too many documents floating around here. Okay. Yes, yes, the last meeting actually had it set up for September 16th, October 12th, November 16th.
Perfect.
So my apologies for introducing a new level of confusion.
Could you guys send that invitation out for the November? I don't have that one. I don't know. Does everybody
I
else
don't have that either.
Okay. Will do. Okay.
Thank you.
So let's circle back if everyone's okay to the mission specific formula and rates of increase. Tomas, let me kick it back to you as far as that issue specifically.
I was just trying to bring it up to avoid a December meeting to might as well get those recommendations for discussion going as pretty much running the data. I guess my comment from my perspective, I know historically, for those institutions that is tied or limited to the average growth of the INO formula, the previous facts have recommended mission specific to be tied or equal to the INO recommendations. I know some new mission specifics were added, performance research driven, and that may be where the question is coming from. So I'll defer to the coordinating board as to the reference for that note and comment.
Okay. So not to, I guess, spring this completely on Emily and Ed. Perhaps we can at least get it on the agenda for the October meeting. I think you're right as far as the older mission specific formulas that did have a cap on the INO increase overall. So and I have to feign ignorance with the research-based mission-specific formulas, whether or not there were similar caps or they were set individually.
I apologize. I might have missed, Tomas, what you specifically asked, but yes, the clinical-based mission-specific formulas all have a cap that's tied to the average growth in INO formula. And so that's MD Anderson, Health Science Center, Tyler, UTMB, and then Texas Tech Health Science Center, El Paso.
Okay.
All of the performance-based research operation mission-specific formulas, I believe, and feel free to correct me, anyone if I'm wrong, those all have a cap that is your prior biennia's general revenue appropriations, less tuition revenue bond debt service, 5% of that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct, Emily. That's my understanding as well at UNT Health Science Center.
Okay.
That's my understanding as well. And I'm sorry if I missed, Tomas, your question or request before. So what is the, is there a request or a question specific to that difference?
So I guess my question on the recommendations, there's a specific number for all the formulas, but mission specific is blank. It doesn't have a recommendation. And it has a footnote that it was pending committee guidance on approach. So I was questioning, what guidance, for those that are tied to INO cap, historically it's always been recommended to be equal to INO. So does the coordinating board have the data they need to recommend a growth factor for the mission specific?
So I think
my question.
That's a good point. And that was what we wanted committee input on is, do you want the maximum to be the governor for every one of the mission specifics? Do you want to project every mission specifics research metrics or clinical metrics and rates, or, how would you like the mission specifics treated?
Yeah, from our perspective for UT Health, I would recommend we forecast, our research dollars, our impact, just for this purpose at least. I think we don't have enough history on the formula itself to necessarily do that. Now we can look at previous track records on research and project forward. If the coordinating board wanted to do the analysis themselves, I'm open either way. We can certainly provide it, at the institutional level, if required as well. We certainly have a good feel for what the future looks like from a proposal standpoint and current awards and all that. And it certainly doesn't dictate changes per se, but it would give us an idea for the overall funding, potential funding picture to build that in for growth.
I would agree on that. I think I would be fine giving some projected information out and then seeing what that 5% limitation does for those projections going forward.
From an MD Anderson perspective, our purpose would be to tie to our historical approach of tying it to the INO growth, like we've done in the past.
Right.
I'll chime in from UT Southwestern's perspective on the performance-based research formula. I think it's important to see how it will, because it's performance-driven, see how it would perform in a vacuum, and then overlay the 5% ceiling, so to speak. So look at both projections. And I think it's also important, I know this would be divergent from the way the Formula Advisory Committee has put forward its recommendations before, but the rider, at least for our performance-based research formula, I can't recall for others, says that there's also legislative discretion on how much to fund. If it happens to be a particularly good budget year, they could fully fund the performance, choose to fully fund the performance, or follow the ceiling or other recommendation, legislative direction they want to take.
Ed, this is Chris from Tyler. I do remember 2 years ago about this time, you reached out to me directly to get an estimate or an update. Was that kind of the charge of the committee, or did you email everybody? Because I do remember kind of giving you an early estimate of where you thought we would land.
Well, it's been, I guess I've slept once or twice since then. I do remember reaching out to you, but I think that was perhaps a different exercise, not related to the committee.
Okay. But certainly we'd be prepared to do that again. It sounds like that's everybody's sentiment is.
Right.
Can I offer a suggestion? since each of your institutions is intimately familiar with your formula, would each performance-based, mission-specific institution want to do their own estimate and provide it to us?
I know we'd be comfortable providing that.
Same
that-
here.
We would be as well.
Okay.
Same at UNC Health Science Center.
Thank
So let's plan on doing that ideally. Again, Ed, if I can get you to give us a little bit of a timetable so that we can make sure we've got the information pulled together and for discussion purposes for the next meeting.
Well, I would think, I don't know really how much time the institutions would like. How about the latter part of next week? Would that be sufficient time?
I tell you what, if we could push it back one more
Yeah,
week.
I would
I know a
agree.
lot of our staffs are in the midst of annual financial reports and year-end reporting. So it probably would give you the best data if we could do this. Today's the 16th, if perhaps we could have it done by the 30th.
Okay.
Although, can I make a comment with that? We can certainly, project out and meet that deadline. As long as we're aware that a month later, we'll actually have one more year of data, research expenditures data that will be the actual base, I think, for the next biennial formula appropriations. So perhaps before this committee completes its work, we could update, with the data that we'll have available later in October.
Sure. Yeah, I think I was hoping that many of us could probably, pull that information. That's why I was trying to get at least to the 30th.
Unfortunately, it's the HHMI and VA expenditures that are always
Gotcha.
delayed.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We will move forward with that. Ed, do we need a motion for this one, or is this?
I don't think so, but Emily may have a different opinion.
Okay. I think we've just left with a little homework. And we'll.
Mike, this is Rick. I have a question. Obviously, these projections are, you talked to the research institutes, you asking for the other institutions that are clinically based, or is we're talking about just research?
I think this was leaning really toward the research based.
Okay, perfect.
Since the clinical side has its own guardrails somewhat in place.
All right, great. I just wanted to make sure. I see
Okay.
Tomas shaking his head. He's smiling too. That doesn't put more work on his plate. Thanks.
Sorry, guys.
Okay. Any other new business? Or old business for that matter? These meetings are going beyond an hour. I'm doing a poor job here.
Not poor. You're just accomplishing much.
No, that's it. It's
Oh, you're doing good. You're doing good, Mike.
we're an active committee. I love it. It's okay. If hearing no other items, if I can have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
I appreciate everybody's time this morning. We will see you in mid-October.
Ed
Thank
and
you.
Emily, thank you very much for providing those numbers with regard to inflation. I know we're asking for more data, but that was a really good background and a base and a foundation. I just want to thank you guys.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you.